What's up guys, it's Brandon from the Hello Hikers. This is the package I got a few weeks ago. It's been sitting in my garage taking up a lot of space, but this is how it arrives on this gigantic pallet. This is the Fab Four's Grumper Bumper. It's a steel bumper including the grill that has a tray for a winch, which I'm going to be mounting this Warn 12,000 pound Warn Evo winch that has some fog lights. I'm gonna throw these rigids on there. I'm gonna make a video. There's not a whole lot of information on the installation, especially with the parking sensors and installing the winch and the lights. So I'm gonna do everything, make the video. Hopefully it's helpful to somebody out there, and hopefully I didn't bite off more than I can chew, because this is a lot of pieces. See what happens. Let's go. Okay, let's get started. First, we need to remove the stock front grille and bumper off the truck. We're going to do that by removing 10 Christmas tree push pins on the radiator cover with a flathead screwdriver. And then we're going to remove the whole radiator cover. Next, we remove the 4 10mm socket bolts on top of the grille. For removing the grill of the truck, I got this nice little trim removal tool set on Amazon, which I will link in the description below. It's not necessary, but it just makes the job a lot easier for this next step. I used painter's tape here to, well, obviously protect the paint, but as well as the lights. We're going to be using leverage here. We don't want to scrape up anything. There are 13 total clips that you need to back out to remove the grill. Using that trim removal kit that I purchased made this a pretty easy task. Using a T15 torque bit, we're going to remove the 5 screws in the fender liner so we can get access to the rear of the bumper. So now we're under the bumper. We're going to remove this guy here first. This is a 15mm. And then we're going to remove this one, this one, this one, which are 15. And then this guy right here, which is a 18. Ow! At this point, there are only 2 18mm bolts shown here. Once you remove these, you'll be able to slide off the bumper. The fog lights and parking sensors share a harness. If you haven't disconnected it yet, this is a good time to do it. It's located on the passenger side as shown here. Once you have the bumper off, you're going to need to remove the stock fog lights, as well as all these brackets and plastic pieces using a 10mm socket and your trim removal tool. This gives you access to the parking sensors. Now that we have access to the parking sensors, we can go ahead and remove it carefully. So that we can reuse them on the new bumper. First, we're going to pull this red tab back. Once that's pulled back, there's a little tug and it should come right off. And we want to be careful taking the sensors out, but we're just going to pry each side up. A little tab on each side. Aye. Right. Well, that didn't go according to plan, but I want to keep this housing. The sensor still fits in there. I'm going to keep this housing and try to salvage that. So the sensor itself looks okay, but I did break off one of the tabs, or both of the tabs on the housing. So I'm gonna be a little more careful removing the housing on the next one. And then again, there's little tabs on each side. You just push them in and the housing should go right through. And yeah, I'm gonna reuse that housing, so be a little careful with those tabs. They are pretty flimsy. Once I got the parking sensors in, I finally opened up the crate from Fab Fours, actually looked at the instructions instead of just winging this thing. And I laid out all the parts on the ground. As you can see here, there's quite a bit of pieces. And it says next, I knew we were gonna remove the tow hooks, but it also said to remove this plate here. So we're just gonna unbolt these 3. And one part I did not realize that's specific to the Silverado is that we need to keep this part of the grill that goes in between the lights. So over here, this section, just the wing, we're gonna cut off. So that is a little bit intimidating. I'm gonna try and use a Dremel, just cut a perfectly straight line. It says we're gonna use those retaining clips to pop that back in place. But luckily I was careful removing it. Remember, I used the painter's tape and the trim removal tool. I laid it down nice and safe, so it's still in good condition. I'm just gonna do my best to make a straight cut on that and go ahead and pop that back in place. That's part of the pre-installation that was in the instructions that I finally just read. I also have to give them credit though. Fab Fours packed this powder coated steel individually, each piece in these blankets. Nothing was scratched, there's no dings, it looks flawless. So I have to give them credit as far as their shipping. Also their instructions, very easy to read and easy to follow. So once again, using painter's tape, I started at the center of the grill and marked it here, measured 22 inches out, drew a straight line, same thing from the bottom, measured 22 inches out, met that straight line up on both sides. That's where we're gonna cut, is that straight line there with the Dremel. So the Dremel with the metal cutting disc worked pretty well with that. As you can see, I got the wing off. You just turn it over and cut off the rest of the edges. So I'm gonna repeat the same thing on the other side. There's 2 clips here on the outside, just push it straight in, and these 2 here. It actually doesn't matter how straight of a cut you do, but I think I did pretty good with the Dremel. If this part was gonna show, I might use some touch-up paint to just paint the edges, but I just put the grill over to see how it would fit. It actually overlaps it by a half an inch or so, so you won't actually see the cut. I mean, do your best to make it nice, but I was proud of how it came out, but then I realized it's not even gonna show, so it's okay. But yeah, this is the other side. Replaced this wing on both sides, so I was pretty nervous about that, but it turned out pretty good. Just using a Dremel, I was able to get pretty precise with my cuts. Next, we're gonna slide the winch tray right into the frame where we removed those tow hooks. There is also this small bracket that you attach to the frame with the hardware that is provided by Fab Fours in the kit. So that was the winch tray install. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bolt and flat washer. And then 1, 2 bolt, flat washer, lock washer. And that thing is secure. Even just lightly tightened on there, it's not going anywhere. So now this is the perfect time to install the winch. So there's 4 bolts underneath the winch. 1, 2, We have 3, 4. Now all I have to do is wire it up. So there's a negative that attaches here in the back. I'm gonna zip tie it along underneath the bottom, come out up here, attach the negative to the battery, and then I'm gonna have the positive not attached to it, but just laying over here. When I need to use the winch, I'll connect the red power and then I'll turn on my winch. That way I don't slowly drain my battery. But those of you that are good with wiring probably would know how to make a relay switch that you could put inside the cabin to turn the winch on and off, at least give the winch power without draining your battery. Might be a cool option, but for right now, I'm just going to feed the wiring up, try and make it look clean, and then keep it disconnected until I need to use it. Next, we are going to assemble this grill piece on the ground before we put it on the grill. That was a lot of hardware to install, but we got everything set up for the grill, and that's what it looks like from underneath. The next step is going to be to reinstall the parking sensors. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to insert the housing first, place in the sensor, and go ahead and get those attached. The housing comes from the outside, and then the sensor just snaps in. Okay, so this is heavy. I'm gonna lift it up. Take these 2 screws, they're gonna go on the top, and they're gonna screw in here and here. It's heavy. Thanks. So I confirmed that the parking sensors work. Now I'm just gonna apply a little epoxy from the inside to keep them nice and tight, and then I'm gonna put a little painter's tape over just to hold it in place until it dries. For the next step, you have access to the wings of the bumper. This is where you would attach any light pods or fog lights that you're using. I'm attaching a rigid fog light at this point. There's only 4 bolts left on each wing, and you need to line them up just right between the grill, the bumper, and the winch tray. But once you get it all lined up and installed, you are done. There was one thing that I did do that I didn't film. Once I put the additional weight from the grill, the bumper, the winch, the front end dropped a little bit, so I was getting some rubbing. I have 35 by 12.5 by 18-inch tires, so I didn't have any rubbing before with the current lift that I'm running, but after adding the additional weight, I was getting some rubbing just on the rear mud flap. So I trimmed that mud flap down a little bit and zip tied the fender liner in. But that is something to consider when you're adding all this additional weight. The winch is running. I mentioned earlier that I'm not as electric savvy as I would like to be, so I don't have a switch to cut the power to the battery. I just was concerned about draining the battery. So for now I have it all wired up except for the positive cable is not touching the battery. My battery has a little plastic cover on it, so I can pull the plastic cover back. It just slides back, it exposes the terminal. I can set the positive cable on, and then my winch will have power. The other thing I need to do before I can actually use the winch is kind of stretch the cable and put pre-tension on it. But basically, these winches come from the factory just loosely wound on there. So if you're going to use this winch straight from the factory without putting pre-tension on it or stretching it, there's possibility of getting some rope burns or some tangles and knots, or some things can just get jammed up. That's a video I could make if you guys are interested in seeing that. I think I'm gonna go out later today and do that just so this winch is ready to go. So yeah, that was the build. I did it by myself. There was one time I used my wife to balance things just so I could step back and look and make sure that the bumper was straight. Other than that, I did this by myself, just a regular guy. I'm definitely not a mechanic. So hopefully this video was useful to you guys. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. It's trail_bosslander. I will be posting more videos in the next few weeks, specifically about the bumper grill winch combo. Also follow me on YouTube. I post videos like this every week. I really appreciate your guys' support. But yeah, it's up and running. Got the winch, got the grill. I'm almost excited. I kind of want to go out and get stuck just to put this thing to use. Maybe help somebody else get unstuck. But either way, I just want to use this bad boy. It looks super cool. It's so aggressive. I guess we'll end the video there. I usually remind you guys to get outside, stay hydrated, and keep on moving.